ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੋਨਮੂਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸ਼ੈਲਟਰ ਬਾਕਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਚੈੱਕ 29,500 ਪਾਉਂਡ ਤੇ ਦੇਣਾ, ਜੋ ਸਾਰੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਏਡ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਪੈਸਾ ਇਕੱਠਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਏ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਆਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸੰਗਤ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾ ਲੂੰਗੇ ਕਿ ਬਾਕਸ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਪੈਕ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਕੀ ਕੀ ਸਮਾਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਆ, ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ CEO ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਕਰੀਏ। ਆਓ ਚਲੀਏ ਅੰਦਰ। ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੇਅਰਹਾਊਸ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਆ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸ਼ੈਲਟਰ ਬਾਕਸ ਸਾਰੇ ਪੈਕ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਅੱਛਾ, ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਕਰਨੇ CEO, ਜੋ ਸ਼ੈਲਟਰ ਬਾਕਸ ਦੇ CEO ਹੈ, ਉਹਦਾ ਨਾਂ ਐਲਿਸਨ ਵਾਲਿਸ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਟੈਂਟ ਬਣਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਹਰੇ ਬਾਕਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਕੀ ਪੈਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। So we've now come from Birmingham, having driven nearly 5 hours to actually present the check that the Sikh community has given us through our channel. And I mean, you're responsible for running of the shelter boxes. So what I wanted to ask you first was, what is it, or when did it start here, and what was the need for the shelter box?
Okay, we were founded here in Helston in the far west of Cornwall in 2000, so we've just had our 15th birthday. And it was founded by a man who originally saw the outcome of a natural disaster on television, literally sitting in his front room saying, that's an awful thing which is happening to those people, they have been left without anything at all. I can see a really, really good need for something like a box full of household equipment to go directly to those families to help them in their greatest hour of need. So we were founded here in 2000. Called Shelter Box. We are literally shelter and household equipments in a big green box, and we give a family everything they need to get their lives back on track after suffering from a major disaster.
So what was the first disaster that actually the shelter box was first used?
So we first responded in Gujarat in 2002 to the Gujarati earthquake, and from there Shelter Box went on to respond to the December tsunami in Southeast Asia, which is one of our biggest responses to date, and from there has just become more and more well known, particularly down here in West Cornwall, for the amazing work that it does with its shelter boxes.
I wanted to ask you about the tent and how many people can actually live in it, and it's actually quite a big tent. You don't realise how big it is when you pack it in the green box. So what was the design of it, and how many people can actually live in it?
Okay, so this is the Shelter Box Family Disaster Relief Tent, and obviously it's the key item that goes in our shelter box. So we say that it can house around 5 to 6 people. It's a good family-sized tent, 2 adults and several children can go in there. We've actually got room dividers inside the tent as well, so we can have different parts of the family but actually sheltering together in one tent.
Okay, let's walk over to what's actually in the green box.
So in front of me you can see our big green shelter box with all of the household equipment in here, and the tent sits in at the bottom because of course we want to take the other things out first before the tent comes out. But you can see we've got various items here that go with the tent. So we've got blankets, waterproof, windproof blankets that we send out. We've got ground sheets as well to make sure that people are protected from the cold and the wet coming up through the bottom of the tent. You can see we've got a water carrier which folds up really neatly to go in the box, taking up as little space as possible. We've got mosquito nets. And we can actually adjust the quantities of things like mosquito nets that we put in depending on what part of the world the shelter box is going to. But a standard box is packed with 2 mosquito nets. And we've got a solar light. We'll actually put in now about 3 or 4 of these because they fold up so small that then are blown up to that kind of size. And once they're powered up with solar energies, these glow into a beautiful white soft light. But these are incredibly useful obviously, when there's no mains power supply, but also for security purposes at night when there's no other light around. I know that when I visited the Philippines after Typhoon Haiyan, the thing which was most obvious to me is how dark it is at night. No street lighting, no household lighting, no lighting coming from shops. So those are an incredibly useful thing for families. And you can see in here as well, there's a toolkit so that repairs can sometimes be made to homes or any rubble or material removed from land. We've got a children's activity pack. Now this is a great thing for giving children literally something to do, keep them a little bit out of their parents' way. But very often children are traumatized by what has happened to them, and just giving them something to do, giving them a bit more structure to their lives, distract them, give them something to look forward to is incredibly, incredibly useful. That's how children's...
So do things over the years, have they changed? Have you added things to the boxes or taken things away?
We have to be very careful with the overall weight of the box. It can only be up to just a little over 50 kilograms for cargo handling purposes. So if we add anything, we have to take something out, which the people in the warehouse are telling me about all the time. This has definitely changed. Now, the solar lamp we used to have was made out of quite hard plastic and looked a bit more like a bulb you'd see hanging from your ceiling normally. These pack up much smaller, obviously, but also more durable and more robust. So these can kind of get thrown around a little bit without them getting broken. So that's changed. We've also changed our mosquito nets, because some of the earlier mosquito nets actually required them to be aired out for 24 hours before they could be used, because the chemical that's been used to treat them was poisonous to anybody who was sleeping under it. So now they actually become pre-ventilated so they can be used straight away. It can be a really difficult thing to explain to a family that wants to protect their children from mosquitoes. No, you can't use the mosquito net for another day. So this was actually quite an important innovation that we were able to do to include them.
I had a question about the tent. Going back to the tent, I mean, it looks quite complex to put up. So when you give a box, surely someone needs help in setting up the tent.
Well, each of our shelter boxes go out with a shelter box response team volunteer, or they usually work in pairs, or with other people who've been trained by our response team volunteers, very specifically so that we can show people how to put up the tent. It has great longevity, provided it's put up correctly and then maintained properly. But I have seen them still in situ up to 12 months after they were originally put up, which is just amazing. So we make sure people are trained, or they have response team volunteers with them to put up the tent, make sure that's done properly.
So obviously it stays on for some time, but what about repair? Let's say something goes wrong with the equipment, or does it just sort of get left behind after?
So every shelter box is in effect a gift or a donation to the family or the people that receive it. We don't go back and collect it in any way, shape or form. It is definitely for them and stays with them. We do know that the equipment we've chosen is as robust as it can be for the weight that we're allowed to put in the box and for the cost effectiveness of what we're doing as well. But we have on occasion gone back to people who are still in our tents, still using our equipment, and replaced items for them. So for example, we've had our tents in Iraqi Kurdistan for a long period of time as a result of the Syrian refugee crisis. We've gone back and replaced some of those tents, taken out the old and very well used ones because they've been there literally for 2 or 3 years, and given people a fresh tent.
Well, Alison, let's walk into the tent. Okay. And as we're walking into the tent, maybe you can explain what this is to me.
Okay, this is a water filtration unit. So one of the first things often to go in a major disaster is a source of fresh, clean and safe water. So we make sure one of these goes in with our box. And you were asking me about what had changed over the time that we've been putting equipment in our boxes. This is one of those things. They're actually quite complicated to explain to a family, particularly if you don't speak English as a first language or don't speak their language. So having something that's very simple to use has been incredibly important. We've changed the make of this and the style of it on quite a frequent basis to make sure we're getting the most simple but safest thing we possibly can for families.
Okay, let's walk into the tent itself, because I think sometimes people feel that to get 15 people into a tent is quite difficult. So I wanted to show, our audience that how big it is inside.
It is, and I can use one of our solar lights as well to try and light up our picture here.
So let's talk about the inside of the tent. I mean, you talked about dividing it, and obviously it must be able to, wind resistant. Maybe you can explain that to us.
It is both wind resistant and capable of being winterized as well when it gets particularly cold. So we actually have another thermal liner which you can see under the door flap just here, if it's okay for me to come closer. You can see a thermal liner can be inserted between the inner of the tent and the outer, so that will winterize the tent as well and make it, it doesn't have an internal heat source, but that will hold whatever heat you do have in here much more easily. Very, very waterproof as well, of course, which again is why they have to be maintained to quite a high standard, because if you get a tear or a rip, you're going to have issues with the waterproofness of it all. But you can see there is place for storage. There are storage pockets in each of the subdivided areas.
So, I mean, how many of these tents have actually gone out to Nepal?
So we are sending just under 1,500 shelter box in our first stage initial consignments. That is where we can actually see where the shelter boxes will be distributed to. So we actually have families in need of them right now. As we improve our understanding of who else needs them and can get access to other parts of Nepal, we'll be sending more shelter boxes out.
Okay, let's go out from the tent and see what else we've got here on the side. Because it's not only shelter boxes that you're doing, you are also doing other packages. And I wanted to ask you about this kit here that you have.
So we were talking earlier about how Shelterbox has adapted and changed some of its equipment over time, and how we've changed and adapted some of the design elements of our tent. Our Shelterbox shelter kits are also part of us thinking about, well, what's best suited for people who have survived a major disaster. Now, the advantage of a shelter kit is it's relatively easy to use, and it can be used to repair your existing home. So you can stay on your land, or you can stay in your village or in your community and not move to a camp or move off-site or move to an emergency collection centre for people. It's got a tarpaulin, it's got fixings, so ropes and clips to hold things together, and also a toolkit. And we're aware as well that the toolkit can then sometimes be used by people in the family to go out and either help other communities, other families, or to use it later on for income earning opportunities. But particularly in something like an earthquake, where some parts of people's homes will have survived, a shelter kit can be used to stabilise what is left of their home and try and keep them in their home until they can get rebuilding. So it's actually a very, very effective way to reach more people more quickly, but people whose homes have got some degree of stability about them. If your home's not livable, then you'll get a shelter box. But if you can repair it, we'll try and give you one of these.
Right. ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਨਾ ਸਮਝਾਉਣ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ 50 ਡੱਬਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਚੈੱਕ ਦੇਣ ਆਏ ਆ ਇੱਥੇ ਸ਼ੈਲਟਰ ਬਾਕਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਇਨੀ ਕਰੀਬਨ 1500 ਡੱਬਾ ਨੇਪਾਲ ਕਾਠਮੰਡੂ ਨੂੰ ਇਕੱਠਿਆਂ ਨਿਕਲਣਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਸਾਡੇ 50 ਦੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਹਿੱਸੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਣੇ ਆ। ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ 50 ਡੱਬਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਖਾਸ ਫਰਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੈਣਾ, ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ 1500 ਜਾਣੇ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਫਰਕ ਆ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਖਰੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛ ਲੈਂਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਇਨੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਵਿਊਜ਼ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕੀ ਸੁਨੇਹਾ ਦੇਣਾ ਹੈ। So Alison, lastly, I'd like to ask you, what would you like to say to the Sikh channel aid team that's collected all this money, and of course our Sikh channel viewers?
I would like to offer my personal thanks from Shelterbox, but it's the people that you are helping who are really saying thank you to you, and I can't say enough for how they must be feeling to know that somebody around the world really cares about what is happening to them right now. So thank you so much to you, to Sikh Channel Aid, and to your viewers for what you've done. It's incredibly generous.
David, if I can just first ask you that could you start us with this map? What is it indicating with reference to the shelter box?
Indeed, yes, it'd be my pleasure to do so. We have a number of different pins on the World Atlas that we see here. The red ones indicate the 200 countries that we have deployed aid to in the 15 years that Shelter Box has been in existence. The blue ones are our current deployments. Obviously, we're all talking about Nepal right now, which is up here. We're in the Philippines, in the Pacific, here in Nepal, as I say, up into Syria, and down into Africa as well. So although we're talking about Nepal an awful lot, there are 3 other disasters which we're serving currently. The yellow buttons show where we have pre-position locations. We have 21 pre-position locations throughout the world, and between them they hold about 8,000 boxes in readiness. This speeds up the operation of deploying aid once we have identified a disaster occurring. And we also have affiliate countries who raise funds and awareness to the work of Shelter Box within their countries, and we have 18 affiliate countries currently. The equipment you see on the table in front of you is an example of the aid that we send. The yellow bag here contains children's activity pack, things that children can use whilst they are looking for their possessions which they have obviously lost. A very interesting point, if I can just point you to it, is this thermal lighting system. In the box, it's in that packed format. It doesn't take up very much space at all. Then it comes out and you inflate it, and this in fact provides a light for the families to have in their tent. It's been proven that those people that have suffered trauma, the hours of darkness are the very worst moment, so providing just a small light of this nature can help that mending process to occur.
If I could just come into that, I've just been told that this light, when it's fully charged, will last up to, what, about 15 hours? 15 hours.
On its 2 settings, so on its weakest setting, on its dimmest setting, shall we say, is 15 hours. On the high setting, it's about 11 hours. So it serves the purpose, and it's charged within about 3 hours of being in the sunlight.
And that's tremendous. It's no bigger than a mobile phone.
Absolutely no. It's modern technology for you. The other items you see here, the thermal blankets, which is the red item here, you would normally expect to see about 6 of those per box. The ground sheets, again, about 6 per box for an extended family to be able to obtain the shelter. The tents you've already seen, but that I feel is the most important item, getting families under cover, avoiding those conditions that they would otherwise suffer in.
And Kurt, if I can bring in Keith here, these disaster boxes can be actually tailor-made to the actual requirement of that disaster. It doesn't have to be the same equipment put into it every time.
No, not at all. It's a case of we get feedback from our volunteers in the country that we're working in, and they can come back and tell us whether the tents are more important or blankets are more important or the water equipment. I think at the moment in Nepal the important factor is shelter, water and warmth. So we're probably starting to tailor our response to that level. Am I correct in that?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so if I can just show you what we've got in this on the table. This white bag is for holding the tent that you've seen earlier erected. People don't even believe that the tent, the size that it is, can actually fit in this bag. We've got the ground sheets blank here. We have the blankets which you've got here, which you can hang up on the hooks quickly. They can be hung up on the hooks. There are 4 of those, and they can be used to catch water because they're fully waterproof. If the item is going to if we're sending something to a cold climate, we can put in hat, gloves and scarves, which I think will be needed today in Nepal, certainly in the mountainous regions of Nepal. We've already talked about the children's activity kit. I call this the adults activity kit, which we've got saw, pliers, hammer, rope, to help them start rebuilding their lives again. We have water carriers that will hold 15 litres of water. We put 2 of those in. And the mosquito nets, of course, when we're going to a cold climate, a hot climate, sorry. And I think, and the pots of pans, of course, and that is covering everything as a basic idea of what goes in the box.
Beside me and around me we have the warehouse team unloading the boxes or the tents from the boxes, and beside me there is a stack of some 250 boxes ready to go into shelter boxes tomorrow morning, and they will be onward transported to Nepal to help those disaster survivors in that country. We're delighted with the support we've had from the Sikh Channel Aid in donating some 50 boxes to Shelter Box, and beside me is a representation of those 50 boxes which will be going to help the people of Nepal and in perhaps other disasters around the world as those occur.